Hello and welcome. This is Enlightened Connections, a space where unseen threads are illuminated between people and spirit, between animals and their humans, and between the everyday and the extraordinary. I'm your host, Lisa Aston Michael, medium, healer, and animal communicator. And I invite you each week to join me as I share conversations and practices that bring light, healing, and connection into your world. Welcome. My very special guest this week is Kim Fairminer. Kim is an astrologer, author, and teacher with more than 25 years' experience in the magical arts. Known for her clear, accurate insights and grounded approach, Kim blends humanistic and horary astrology, yes, horary astrology, with transpersonal counselling to help people navigate life with clarity and confidence. She writes the daily horoscopes for the West Australian newspaper and is a co-author of the acclaimed Living Witchery series. Through her consultations, courses, and writing, Kim guides others to live in harmony with the cosmos and helps to reconnect with their own innate creativity and wisdom. Welcome, Kim.
Hello, super excited to be here, Lisa.
I'm super excited to have you. Everybody and their dog loves astrology. And I'm going to ask you some questions, but for those who don't know what horary astrology is, I certainly didn't. Would you like to describe what that is exactly and how it differentiates humanistic astrology in your work? They're two very different approaches. So how do you bring these together in a reading, and what do they each reveal about a person's life path?
Yeah, most people are fairly familiar with the natal chart. Whenever something begins, when a person's born, when a company starts, there's an inception chart for that. And we can get a lot of information from that. But that chart describes the whole lifetime and even beyond the lifetime of that personal entity. So that's pretty big picture stuff. And yes, it's activated by transits and progressions, and we can do a lot with that. But if you've got something really specific, and you're, down in the weeds, and say you're asking, you're wondering about taking a job, or, how a particular date's going to work out with somebody you've gone, on a you're involved romantically with them, or it could be a business partnership, and you want to know about that particular person, not your career in general, not how you approach relationships in general or during a period of time. You've got something really specific you want to know. Horary is the style of astrology that can be used to answer that question. Usually it's framed as a yes or no question, will I, won't I? But it can also answer where and when questions with a bit more involvement from the person. So it's really kind of it's a divinatory approach, I think, more than a forecasting or exploratory approach to astrology, which I think is more your natal and your mundanes. It's more working with the symbols. This is taking those symbols and going, well, in the context of this specific question, what are these planets doing? And it basically reveals where the most likely outcome is based on what's happened in the past and what planetary energies are likely to happen in the future. So it's kind of gives you this little window into fate, I think, in the near future in the context of that question, what is most likely to happen. The interesting thing for me is that once you've asked the question and you've seen the answer, or you've explored that answer with an astrologer, then your free will can kick in and you can go, no, I don't like that, so I'm going to... It's an uphill battle sometimes going against what's fated, where the energies are running. But, salmon swim upstream, so why can't humans from time to time, hey?
I totally agree with you. Yeah, free will is a thing, isn't it? I don't know too much about astrology. I started off myself as being one of those people that reads my stars in the paper, and then found out somewhere that Oh, you should also look at your rising sign as well. And that took me down a rabbit hole because I thought, oh, all these years I've been thinking I should just stick to that. And, this is very beginner's stuff I'm talking about. But then you find out, oh, I have a rising sign. Oh, look out, I have a moon. Oh, dear, I've got a Mercury. And, oh, everything's on these planets. And that kind of leads you to you finding out a little more about your natal chart. And it's unbelievable how specific it can be. Yes, we all have free will. But then you've got all your transits and your progressed moons. And something came up recently about where is the Saturn-Neptune conjunction sitting at 0 degrees Aries. Where is this in your chart? What house is it in? And what planets govern those houses in your chart? And I thought, oh my God, how would you know that? How on earth would you find that out? I'm flat out reading my rising sign.
It can seem complicated. I think it's like, people make the analogy that astrology in some ways is like learning a foreign language. And the symbols, whether they're planets, signs, houses, the conjunctions of transits, what progressions are doing, all those kind of layers. But you can, like, that example of, knowing your rising sign, it's a little bit more than knowing your sun sign, which might be, say, knowing how to say hello and thank you in a foreign language. Maybe now you can order a drink and ask where the toilet is. Eventually, like, the more you practice, the more you learn and the more you kind of use it, whether that's a foreign language or, at astrology, the more fluent you become. And it's not like, you don't understand and then all of a sudden you do understand. And I have I have attempted to learn a foreign language. Mi español es muy malo. But
better than my Spanish.
I practice it and I come back to it. And, sometimes it is overwhelming and astrology can be overwhelming. Because there's so many people saying so many things. And it's like, well, I haven't looked at that fixed star in my chart. Oh my gosh, what does this comet mean? Like, there's all these like really little small things. But one of the ways that I approach astrology, and I think sort of some of those more traditional approaches like horary offer like a clarity because, hundreds, thousands of years ago, they really only worked with 7 planets, the ones that we could see with our naked eye before telescopes were invented. So they could do amazing things with that. And so, we add these things in and we think we're all very sophisticated, but it can confuse what we're looking at and give us too much information. And, we can't see the forest for the trees. So I think, if you know your sun sign, like, your core essential nature. And if you were born a Leo, you'll always come back to the sun. If you're Pisces rising, well, maybe you're a little bit more of a fluid Leo. And it's just like bringing those two things together and sitting with it. And those are kind of like the foundations, the building blocks. And with the moon, I'd add that in. And, then I'd start sort of bringing things in. So there are big things that you can prioritize and, hang your hat on. And then you bring in the extra things later, and it's kind of like that nuance with a foreign language that, perhaps you start to understand the humor in the language, because astrology can be quite funny, and sort of see a bit more nuance in the symbols. If you think of it like learning a language and that you need practice but give yourself credit for knowing the basics and following the planets. And, the fact that you even know that there's a big Saturn-Neptune conjunction coming up is, something that you can watch and see what happens in your chart in that sector. And, I think that's a thing too, like, because you don't just look at the sky, because the sky in and of itself, like knowing that there's a Saturn-Neptune conjunction coming up, it's not particularly meaningful. Like something's happening in the sky, woo. But what does it mean for me? And, your interpretation, your observations of what's happening in your life is part of that meaning making. So you have a role to play, and it's an essential role. Like, you're the one looking at the conjunction of the planets. You're the one looking at what's going on in these signs. You're the one relating it to the chart. So you are intimately involved in that process. And I think this is perhaps where my approach takes that traditional stuff and then brings in those more humanistic, transpersonal ideas. Like, the person is important. We're the ones with the feet on our ground. We're the ones, connecting up to the sky through our, you might conceptualize it as your crown chakra or your mind. Like, we're the battery that generates meaning, generates change. Like, we are really, really important to our own lives and to, the people around us as well, and what's happening, you ripple it out to, like, life on Earth completely.
That's an interesting thing that you're saying about, how we live our chart in a way, because I find it interesting if somebody has a lot of water in their chart and they might not connect so well with air people, or in a relationship, air people and earth people don't connect so well, but fire and water kind of do, but they kind of don't. It's really, really interesting. It's like, how come this doesn't go with that and that doesn't go with that? You look at your star sign, it says, oh, if you're an Aries, you're not compatible with Cancerians, and so on and so forth. But I think there's astrological, but there's a lot of energetic meaning to your chart as well, to your planets. And I think most people now know the big three, the sun sign, the moon sign, and the rising sign. But golly, when you look at where all the planets are, and your chart looks like a big wheel with like pie charts, and they're the houses. When you look at the planets that are in those houses, it really digs deep, doesn't it, into who you are, what your path is. You can look at your finances, you can look at your career, you can look at your relationships, why you came to this earth. It's so incredible. Yeah, I found it interesting. In my little chart, there's nothing in my family chart, nothing. And interestingly, I have no children, and there's like zip in my family pie chart, and I thought, I wonder if that's just coincidental or if that's a thing. Did I choose that life, this incarnation, to kind of be a lone wolf? It says so in my chart there.
Yeah. Well, in a way, that's absolutely true. Just because you have like what's an empty sector, an empty house in the chart, it obviously doesn't mean that you have no sense of family, no sense of like belonging, or like, if it's your fourth house, that also relates to, in a way, your inner world, like you in your home. But I can clearly see that you've got a home there with a microphone set up. So you're not homeless, but it has expressed itself in a particular way. And when a house is empty of planets, of traditional planets, it generally means that area of those topics aren't a priority this lifetime. So you'll have planets in other sectors, and no, everybody will have empty sectors, because there's 10 kind of there's 7 traditional planets, 3 modern planets, and that's 10. There's 12 houses. So everybody has empty houses, but we don't have empty lives. Everybody relates to all the 360 degrees somehow. But obviously, each of us prioritize different things in a lifetime. So where you have a lot of planets, those house topics will be very active, will be something that you're very interested in, and your energy will be drawn there time and again. Whereas the houses that don't have planets in there won't be such a priority. You won't get as much kind of like juice or interest. It won't be as engaging for you. But that sector of the chart will have a planet that looks after it. So it's just kind of like indirect, I guess.
That's interesting. Oh, that's what it must mean when you're asked what planet governs that house for you.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Every sign has I refer to it jokingly, but not so jokingly, as a boss planet. So when you do have an empty sector, you look to that boss planet. And even if there are planets there, that boss planet still has something to say about what happens in that sector of the chart.
That's hugely interesting. A lot of astrologers, I don't know if you also refer to this, tend to not speak about Chiron. And Chiron seems to me to be quite important because it's the wound, isn't it? It's the wound.
Yeah, I don't do a lot with Chiron. I sort of tend to treat it perhaps like a fixed star. Sometimes it pops up. I turn it off and on in my astrology software. And I feel like sometimes it's relevant and sometimes it's not. Some people, if you've got Chiron on an angle, you're going to really identify with the story of Chiron and the topics and themes that are connected to Chiron's myth. I think for healers, it is definitely worth looking into Chiron and where Chiron is placed in the chart. There are also asteroids that you might look at if you were specifically like looking through a healing lens at the chart, or you were a healer or you were on a healing journey. You could like work with Chiron to expand that journey and tease some things out and see if it resonates for you. It may resonate, it may not. But Chiron doesn't sort of govern any sector of the chart. Another I think for healing, there's the sixth house is a house of service. So for people that are working in healing professions and feel that they're on a path of service, I would look at the sixth house, planets in the sixth house, the planet that rules the sign on the sixth house cusp. I would look at that as well. You might also look at the opposite side of the chart, the 12th house, because that kind of relates to, I would say, if Chiron's related to wounding and that healing journey, the 12th house is things that we can't see and the ways that we injure ourselves sometimes. So that also, I think, has an interesting relationship to the spiritual dimensions of healing, because we don't always see what's happening with healing. Like we might be able to feel a shift, but often a lot of healing work happens without our conscious awareness. So I think looking at the 12th house is particularly helpful for that. And then, of course, you'd bring in, particularly for energy work, I would say the 9th house, that's like spirituality and philosophy, religion in all its expressions. And I would say also the 3rd house, which is the house of the heretic. So like the non-traditional ways that we connect with spirit in small ways. That's the house of the goddess. So you've got the house of God and the house of the goddess. And those are all there's a connection to the cadent houses. They're not as embodied. The angles of the chart, the ascendant, the midheaven, and the descendant and IC, which are opposite those really kind of loud angles, are things that are very, to me, visible about a person. And as those houses fall away, we come to the cadent angles, and they're like the least tangible. And that is why I'd probably look at those in relation to healing work, those cadent houses. They are a source of fascination to me, and I've done some research around that, and I ideally would love to look into it a bit deeper. And yeah, the people that are listening probably have some interesting things going on in their cadent houses.
No doubt, because most of the people listening are either healers or they're very involved in a healing modality of some kind, even if they're not aware that they're actually doing it. That's for sure. It can get quite deep and complex, astrology, can't it? But I want to touch on something here. You've written daily horoscopes for years. What
Yes.
do people misunderstand the most about astrology, and how can we use it more effectively in our everyday decision making?
That's the thing. I think daily horoscopes, in a way, they're fluffy. But obviously, I'm bringing like years of experience into those short little sentences that I'm writing that have a shelf life of 24 hours. And I think people misjudge horoscopes. Because astrology encompasses everything we do, like from like the smallest little superficial encounters to that deep healing work over, many lifetimes. So astrology is the superficial stuff. It is the really deep stuff. It is the full breadth and spectrum of human experience. So horoscopes are part of it. And some people are like, oh, blah, 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 horoscopes, ew. But I think that's a really approachable way for people to have a small point of spiritual connection in their day while they're just, scrolling their phone on the train or sipping a coffee, and they'll just, have that little niggle like, I'm just going to check my horoscope. Like, it's a nice thing to do. And for that, minute, they're thinking about their life in spiritual terms.
That's really interesting. I love hearing people say, "Oh, no, that's all woo-woo. I don't believe in it, but I don't like Virgos." It's like, what?
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's probably my sort of, big thing is that you hear those statements all the time, and that person saying that would be, "Oh, I'm a man of science," or like, I'm very rational. But humans aren't rational. Not all the time. We're like emotional creatures. Our energy fluctuates. Sometimes we feel drawn to a person or a topic inexplicably. We don't know why. You come to a fork in the road in your life. You have to choose left or right. You can't kind of explain. Well, maybe you can. You can try to explain it rationally, but I think that's just kind of papering over the true story that you had like a gut feeling. You heard a little voice. Even intuition plays a massive role in science as well. So I don't know. There are astrologers out there that want astrology to be a science, but like most things, it's not an either-or situation. It's both. Yeah.
It's been around for a very, very, very long time, and some famous people in history wouldn't move out their front door without consulting their astrologer. So there's a lot in it. And I think when we judge people by, what's your star sign? That question that's bantered around. What's your star? Oh, I'm a Leo. Oh, I don't like Leos. Or, oh, I love Leos. But that actually is just the personality, isn't it? The sun sign is just purely the personality that you see because you don't know the complexity of that person. What else is in their chart?
Yeah, absolutely. The ascendant is something that's generally like the rising sign is very obvious to the people that we meet and interact with. But like that's just like the tip of the iceberg of the whole person. You don't see when you first meet someone what they're like as a partner or, how they are with their kids or even, how they conduct themselves in a meeting unless you're actually, about to go into that meeting. So until you see with your own eyes, you can't really know. You might get an inkling if you're, quite astrologically adept if you have their chart, but they're not going to hand that over in the first 30 seconds of knowing you. So you do need to, I think, give people the benefit of the doubt and making those sweeping generalizations. We all do it. It is sorting things into, like Virgos and Leos and, Cancerians and, whatnot, sorting people by their sun sign if you know their sun sign, or perhaps you're just like, oh my gosh, it was such a strong Sag energy, I had to get out of there. It makes it easier for us to get on with our day and dismiss things. And you don't have to be open to everybody all the time. There's a very good reason for, sorting things into categories and prioritizing things, because otherwise you'd be open to everybody all the time. And like, that's not a good way to conduct your life. And astrologers aren't above it either. When I was an astrology student many, many years ago, I was anti-Cancer men. This back when I was a swinging single. Not swinging, but but getting
You're
out
not an
there.
Aries, are you?
I have some Aries planets, but well, and perhaps this when I was, a wee little baby astrologer, maybe that was contributing to. It was my experience of Cancerian men up until that point that I was like, nah. If he's a Cancer, just deal me out, and I would actually stop talking to people, make my excuses, and go and talk to somebody else once I'd sussed out that this person was a Cancer. I was like, well, I am not up for that. I'm not up for what I perceived as the emotion, the sensitivity, because I think yes, it was my Aries planet. So I was there for the thrill, the excitement, the banter, the all that kind of immediate sparkiness. That's what I was looking for, and Cancer did not offer that to me. But years later, maybe not that many years later, met a lovely man, and he's like, in the office down the hall, and he's a Cancerian. We're married, have been for 12 years. So never say never, people. Never say never, because you're basically just tempting the universe to play a good old joke on you. He's the perfect partner, and they're that star sign you don't like.
Isn't that funny? I remember years and years ago, I fell head over heels for this guy. He was a Capricorn, head over heels. And it didn't work out. But I remember looking up at the sky and going, one day I'm going to have my Capricorn husband. Well, I have one. It's not that guy.
Yeah,
It's another guy.
absolutely.
But he is my Capricorn husband, and I am a Cancer, so we're poles. Well, Cancer sun sign, we're poles apart. And my mum always said, "I don't know how you two do it. You have nothing in common, but yet it works." So it's very, But we've been talking about the base level sort of star sign stuff, but the astrological chart can also show us a lot of detail in terms of what's happening with the planet, what's happening in the financial world, the structure of the financial world. If we look right now, and please correct me if I'm wrong about this, but I think there's Neptune's been lurking about, and we look at water everywhere, and there has been nothing but floods everywhere. So something like that can help us to understand what's coming up planetary-wise as well. Would that be right?
Yeah, absolutely. The area of astrology that you're describing is called mundane astrology, and it's astrology of countries, of the weather, of the economy, and it's really interesting to see that play out in the world. What I particularly like to do, and I do it on YouTube with a friend that's interested in mundane astrology, because astrologers get pretty nerdy, and we love a nerdy chart. So you can do like the Aries Ingress is a way of looking at the cycles for, say, Australia, or you could probably do it with, say, where I am. I'm in Brisbane, so you could probably cast a chart for Brisbane and look at what's happening in Queensland for that year. There's also those bigger global trends. So with the shift of Neptune and Saturn out of watery Pisces into fiery Aries, it may be that there's drier conditions on the way. Whether this is even like weather forecasting by astrology is even like a nerdier subsection of mundane astrology. So I don't really go to that level of detail, but sometimes when you look at an Aries Ingress chart, there is a really loud statement of a lot of water or a lot of fire energy. And yeah, it comes back to those really ancient ideas about dryness and heat, or, moisture and coolness, like more temperate conditions. So, ideally we'd like a balance of those. But some years you just get like a huge amount of, one element in a certain jurisdiction. And that can certainly indicate indicate, floods or fires. And, there'd probably be other indications of disaster. Yeah, but that is all there. And we can sort of explore that as well.
Okay. So if I wanted to get a reading, come to you for a reading, would I need to know to ask for a horary chart reading, or is that something that you just do? And how do you do that for me? What's the difference between coming to you and coming to and say reading something in the paper or looking at a Placidus chart or something like that?
Yeah, so, like, if you come for a natal reading, that's when you need your, date of birth, your place of birth, and ideally your time of birth. So whenever a little baby's born in, your family and friends, try and get the date, because if that child turns out to be an astrologer, they will thank you forever for an accurate birth time. Yeah, the lovely thing about horary is that if you don't have that information, and some people don't even know what date they were born, due to their family circumstances at the time. Maybe you're adopted, maybe you sort of, move country, or you were orphaned or something, like, these real human experiences. And the beauty of horary is that it can help you explore your career or your relationships or, your art, and creativity. Like, so anything that you want to ask about, you can just pose the question, without having birth data for, a horary question. And I think that makes it really approachable. I often say that astrology is for everybody. It's really useful and inclusive. And maybe you can't sort of, narrow it down to, knowing exactly the degree of your rising sign, but a skilled astrologer can work around that. And you forge a relationship over time with your astrologer. It's really nice to, have somebody that you go to rather than kind of, bopping around between people and, getting back to square one and having like a natal reading every time. I think it's probably the same with other modalities as well. You get to a greater depth by building a relationship with your practitioner, and you learn what's flowing and can join the dots a lot better. I do natal readings. I really love to do a natal forecast, particularly for the year ahead for people on their birthdays. I play around with how I'm offering horary because people aren't as familiar with it. So if you want to come to me for a horary reading, I used to offer like a 30-minute session, but they're really kind of very unique. At the moment, I'm offering them over WhatsApp. So we have sort of a window where, like, you tell me your situation, we get to the question, I cast the chart, and then I talk through the chart in voice notes, and you end up with a judgment. So that's how I'm doing it at the moment. I'm not married to that. I'm still, working out the best way for me and the best way for clients. But if you'd like to if you've got a question that's like popping up for you as you listen to this, send me an email, contact me through my website, book in for a session, because there's this thing called the horary moment, this moment where you have a question and you can't not ask it, and you might go, I'll just go make a cup of tea, and then you like hang out the clothes, and then that question is still there, and it's like, well, this is a question that's been put forward by your unconscious mind, your intuition. It's bothering you at a deep level somewhere, and it needs to be explored in a non-rational way.
Well, I'll be booking in with you, Kim, for a specific question. I can assure you of that. There was something else that just swept through my mind then as you were speaking. Oh, so can a horary chart help you with a question in all areas of your life, like finance, relationships, should I move home, all the mundane kind of questions people have? Can it respond to any question?
Yes. Yes, it absolutely can. I've had the full gamut of horary questions. I often use it for situations for me that have happened, and I'm like, what went on there? Like, what did I miss? How did we end up here? And I can sort of see, like, oh, well, like, did that person lie to me? Will the deal go through?
Mm.
Like, am I going to get the job? Sometimes it's really interesting because you're asking a yes no question. You think it's just going to be like fast and clean. Sometimes I get those questions and it feels like the clouds have parted. Angels are like, trumpeting down, going, oh. But, and I love those moments. I just love those just crystal clear horary answers. It's like, you're directly on the phone to the gods. But sometimes there's like nuance. And I think with the nuanced ones, that's an invitation for you as the reader of the chart, the querent, to sort of tease it out a little bit more and having somebody else to tease it out with. And we can go, well, this planet's doing something. Who is that planet? And that means somebody else is involved in the situation. And, I can't, as the astrologer, I don't know the situation intimately enough to know that this person is your sister, for instance. But like, if I can describe that person, you might think that it is, your sister or your colleague. Like, so there's this real kind of so co-creative, but we're not creating anything. We're exploring the symbols together. So I think it's really sort of a beautiful symbiosis, beautiful flow between the chart, the querent, and the astrologer that we can, get a result and create some space, I think, for the querent's free will to kick into gear and, move the situation in the direction that they ideally would like to see it.
Well, I'm going to give people your website and how to get in touch with you towards the end of our interview. But for the moment, I just wanted to ask you also, your work bridges ancient magical traditions with modern life. So in your view, what's the most important cosmic or spiritual principle that people need to reconnect with right now, and why?
It brings me back to the idea that humans aren't rational. We are deeply rational. And I wish more people would accept that. I wish people would recognize that not that like there are entities interfering with their life, but the energetic flow to how we move through the world. And we can use our awareness of that flow to kind of slip into a stream or a water slide, whatever sort of image you'd like to use, to get to where you're meant to be faster. Like, life doesn't have to be difficult. Sometimes some of us prefer to take, the goat track up the mountain rather than, the 4-lane highway. And that's okay. We can sort of see that in your chart. But if you're kind of not open to that and you don't understand that you need a degree of challenge to feel accomplished, to feel alive, things might feel just difficult. But that just might be how you operate. And when you understand and allow that to be, that's okay. And I think trying to drag it's a bit of a bugbear for me that, we work in the spiritual field. A lot of spiritual practitioners included like to try and find a scientific explanation for everything. It's like, oh, that's quantum. Oh, that's, I don't know, aliens laser beaming us from outer space. Like, why can't we just sit with the mystery that we don't know everything and that there's beauty in that? And yes, we can engage with that mystery. Yes, we can ask those questions. And our lives as human beings is richer for that mystery. We don't need to know all the ins and outs of everything. We need to make space for the gods and magic and engage with ourselves and the people around us in a magical way, in an intuitive way, and flow with what we know to be deeply true in our souls, that not everything can be solved with our brains.
I love that. I think back to going to certain things like ballet. I love ballet. I've never been to see the ballet ever. And I held myself back from it because once I see something, I want to know how to do it.
Ah.
I want to know how to do everything. and then I set off on a journey to learn the mechanics of it. And some things, as you've just said then, we don't have to. We can just love the mystery of it. We can just see that, and we don't have to be that or do that. We can just appreciate that. I think, again, it might be in in a chart thing, this investigator mind. Oh, how does that work? Get a Lego, Lego, pull it all apart, build it all up. But we don't have to do that. But astrology certainly gives us a peek into the greater everything, I think.
Yeah.
The greater everything, and just gives us guidance really more than anything, doesn't it? Gives us some guidance, because sometimes it can be a little challenging, especially in these times that we're in now. Which way do I go? Where do I look? Who do I trust? It's important, I feel, astrology, to bring that back to yourself so that you know the self better. If you know the self better, then it helps you to navigate your external world. And I think for some people, again, you may need to correct me on this, but for some people, if there's a great deal of water in their chart, they may tend to be more emotional. They may tend to cast a wide net. They might, be people-pleasing, or not in every case.
Yeah.
If you have a lot of water in your chart, you see a lot of nurses and a lot of people in service, a lot of caregivers, a lot of nurturers is the word I'm looking for. And then you've got your fire people, who are your action people, and your air people, who are your speakers and your platform people and your talkers and your masterclass, all that sort of thing. I don't know. I'm speaking with a wide, broad stroke here, but I think it helps if you know the lay of the land with your own chart, so that you can understand yourself better in this particular climate right now.
Yeah, that's where the transits come in, because they'll be activating something in your unique chart. So, like, there may be like a test or an opportunity, a challenge, or a way to expand and grow. And getting a feel for what's here for you right now, because really all we've got is the present moment. Astrology is very complex like that, and that we can reach into the past and that we can reach into the future. It is like an intellectual exercise for me, but while my brain's entertained, my intuitive and, dare I say, psychic faculties can go off and play like pixies. So it's about bringing all those things together in a balance that's right for you in that moment.
That's beautiful. So look, I'm going to give people now your information. If you would like a reading, either a natal chart reading or a horary chart reading, or any kind of astrological reading that Kim offers, you can reach her at her website, Kim Fairminer. It's Kim with an I, Kim, Fairminer, FAIRMINER.com. And Kim is also on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. And also, Kim says that the best connection from her inbox to yours is to subscribe to her newsletter for email updates from her website. There's a lot in that, Kim. But before you go, I do want to thank you for everything today. I could talk about astrology with you forever and a day. But before you go, I ask all my guests one question. If there was one message that you could give to the world right now, one message, what would it be?
Look at the moon. Go outside and just, when you see the moon, just take a moment and heart to moon, just connect with that.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, just feel into it. Check in where you are, how you feel about everything. The moon is a beautiful way of connecting with astrology visually. It reminds us of the cycles. The moon moves the tides. It moves our hearts. She is beautiful. And just connect with the moon.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Kim. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you about astrology, and horary astrology in particular, which was very new to me. But you can find more about horary astrology from Kim's website. I do encourage you to reach out to her. She is extremely knowledgeable and very attuned to helping you on your path ahead. Thank you so much, Kim.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been delightful chatting with you about the thing that I love. One of the most things, it lights me up to talk about the stars and the planets and the moon and everything. And it's been a delight to talk to you today.
You're very welcome. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much, Kim.
Thank you.
Bye for now.
Bye.
Thank you so much for being here and tuning into Enlightened Connections. I truly hope today's episode offered you something to reflect on, expand into, or feel more deeply connected to, whether within yourself or with the animals and spirit world around you. If you enjoyed this conversation, please follow or subscribe to the show and share it with someone you feel may benefit from it as well. It's one of the most supportive ways you can help this podcast reach more hearts, more homes, and more animal lovers. And if you'd like to stay connected in between episodes, come join me inside the Enlightened Connections podcast Facebook community. I'd absolutely love to have you there. Until next time, take gentle care, stay connected, and trust the whispers.